there, everybody, and welcome. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations. Thanks for tuning in today. No surprise, this is what we're going to be working on. Now, this one, this is heavy. You can see that it's up on rollers because I just can't even move it by myself. So, to be able to work around it in the shop, I have to have it up so I can move it. And it's got like a skirt down on the bottom here. So it's kind of big, it's kind of clunky. It's got this ridge, you know, kind of like a ledge here and a ledge on the bottom. And I debated a lot of things. I had posted on my Facebook page, you know, to folks, what would you do with this, just to give me ideas. I've been staring at it in my shop for weeks trying to figure it out. And I finally have an idea. And I think what I want to do is go completely different than what you would think. I mean, this is sort of not quite mid-century modern, but it's got kind of those lines. You know, you could easily two-tone it, maybe do black and black top and black base, black hardware, and leave that wood, which isn't, so don't yell at me, it's not solid wood. So you could two-tone it, you could do the navy route with the gold hardware, but that's not that interesting to show you. I mean, that's fine if I'm just painting it in the shop. And it might sell faster if I did that, but it's not as interesting and it's not as fun for me. So, I am on here to just kind of jump on, give you a vision of what we're starting from, and to let you know what I'm doing in the meantime. So it needs a really good clean. So, you know, I've got my TSP and my water here. I'll be making sure that there's no oil or grease on it, wiping all that off. So, you know, again, any cleaner that you're using, then you go over it with just water again, making sure that that's gone and dry. The hole, the single hole on the small drawers is going to be fine. That's going to work for me. I'm going to replace that with some kind of pull. These holes are not. Now, they've got the double pulls. I don't really like that. And these are like over 6 inches apart. And that's going to be awkward because it bows. So I haven't figured out what I'm going to do. And because I'm going to have patterning in here, I don't want it to be something really big or clunky. So I'm going to plug up those holes so it gives me some flexibility. And then that way I'm not locked into the 6 inches. I can maybe see what else I can find in hardware. And smaller hole space is going to be easier when you're dealing with the curve, because this section kind of bows out. So I'm going to get those filled and sanded, and I'll wipe down again, and then I'll be back with you to start in on the actual fun part, which is painting. Hey there. So here's where we're at. I have all of the drawers wood filled and sanded. Now, as it turns out, down the sides, I thought that I would only have to fill just the middle drawers, right? Just these big ones. But it turns out that as much as there was just a single knob down here, these ones had a faceplate, and the faceplate was hiding the fact that there was actually 2 holes there. I don't know. So I ended up having to wood fill every drawer except the very top 2, and that's it. So I'll have a lot more drilling for hardware after. But I have those filled, and I do fill the insides, and I sand the insides as well. First of all, because it's a more finished look, but also if you look at this one, right, here's the 2 holes. If I put a single knob, it's going to likely go right in the middle. So I need to have support on both sides of that for it to be a good job, and I'd like to do a good job. Now, to start, I'm going to base coat this piece. So I'm going to give it 2 coats of DIY crinoline, which is definitely a cream color, right? So it's definitely not white, it's definitely cream, but I want to go kind of an old world finish on this. And so I definitely think that cream is the way to go for what I'm looking at doing. So I'm going to have to get 2 coats on this, and I'm using my Klingon S50 brush. Awesome brush, holds a lot of paint, does quick work, nice and smooth, and cleanup is great and easy, which makes my life easier and me a little happier. So I'm gonna get 2 coats on this, the entire piece, before I come back at you, so that we've got a nice, even, smooth surface to be able to start working on our next layers. Okay guys, I've got this base coated. It's got at least 2 light coats on the drawers and the top. The bars coming across here and down there, they've only got 1 coat because I'm envisioning doing them another color. So I didn't want to waste paint and paint them with another coat of the cream needlessly. If I decide that they're going to be cream, I can do that after. But here's the plan. I am looking at using the Chateau inlay from IOD, but only on this kind of 2/3 here, on these drawers all the way across. I'm envisioning doing something different on the top drawers and possibly the top of this is really kind of awkward going opposite directions. Anyway, I might be doing something different, but I want to get the inlay on first. And that way then, once it's on and the paint's on, then I can see the direction I'm going. I'll see how much color I have. So sometimes, even though it might seem easier to paint those out first, yeah, the color and the look of it is really going to depend upon what the inlay ends up looking like. Now, some of these inlays are designed to be used exactly how they're printed out on the back. Some of them are just in pieces and you can cut them out and use them. This one, my biggest recommendation for this one is, see how you've got pictures of each of the little pages? Cut this out and then move those little pieces around until you get the match that you like, that's going to fit your piece of furniture, because this side matches up with this side, and right, so it all fits together, so it becomes like a big puzzle, and that way then you can use the pages in different ways. I'm going to complicate my life even more, and I'm going to cut apart the pages. So I'm thinking, see this circle over here that matches with that circle? I want that right here. I want that in the middle. So a lot of the other bows and things I'm going to be cutting out and fitting on how I want. So I'm going to be creating my own design. I'm not going to be putting the deer on this design. And I'm thinking this big piece, I'm probably just going to leave for a different piece. So I'm going to try and use pieces that make sense for this, but leave behind pieces that also work together for future projects, just to make my life even more challenging. And I may do a little, you know, a little bow swag on the 2 ends as well. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So I don't really have a clue how much I'm using and how much I'm not. But I'm going to get these all cut apart and kind of lay out my pattern on the floor so that when I start adhering it, I don't mess it up. I have the pieces cut for the front, and the only other piece of information I have for you is there is a small border around the edges of all of the inlays. Where you want 2 pieces to ultimately butt up together, you need to cut that little tiny border. It's maybe about 1/4 inch. You need to cut that away. So like this much. So that they do. Otherwise, you're going to have this gap between them. If you end up with a little bit of gap, take a little bit, once you peeled them off, take a little bit of water on a paintbrush and kind of smear the paint. Paint them together. You can do that by activating the paint, but easier not to do that. Now, I did mark this roughly. I probably should mark up here because I'm going to be painting over that spot. All right, that's roughly my middle. And if it's not, I'll live through it. All right. So what I'm going to be doing is attaching this so it fits kind of top to bottom in my section. And then I have the other half that goes here. Then I have a bit of a swag and a little bit of a chandelier coming down here. And that takes up the whole space across here. Leave me lots of my inlay still. So I'll probably do one little piece on the other side. But yeah, we still have that. So we'll see how that goes. So the idea with the inlays, because this is artist grade paint on here, we want to ultimately embed this paint into paint, which means I need to paint this. I need to get this wet again. So I've got more of my crinoline, which I have quite honestly watered down a little bit. DIY gets quite thick. And so I need to have paint, and I need to have a fair bit of paint. So, I mean, you don't want it gloppy, but I need enough paint for this to adhere in. And just for consistency's sake, I'm going to take it out to the edges, and I'm just going over far enough for that first one. I can't remember how far down it goes. Shoot. That's what I was supposed to be paying attention to. Okay, so we're going to take our inlay, paint side against your painted surface. And I'm just going to try and roughly get it straight. And this is coming down way further than I thought. So let me get some more paint up there. And then we're going to lay it down. And I'm going to take a brayer and just kind of flatten it down into the paint. Anything that's raised, if you have some of the design elements that are raised and not down in the paint, well, they're not going to release any of their pigment into your painted surface. So I'm just going to bray that in. Right down along the edge. And I'm going to do the bottom edge now and just get this entire section done. You want it down. And I forgot to cut that. So here, I forgot to cut my little edge. You can see that. So I need to get that out of the way. And then I can line up my design. Awesome. So get that right down in there. I don't have enough paint there, I can just tell. There we go. And now I'm going to work on the other half of my design. There we go. Okay, so once it's all stuck down, look at how lovely that looks already, right? And this is, it doesn't even look quite as vibrant as it's going to. Once we've got that all down, we just want to make sure that we truly activate all of that paint So we're going to spritz it. So you're just spritzing it lightly. And you can see that that paper becomes translucent. And that gives you a good idea. And I like to, again, take my brayer, now that that paper's soaked, and wet it all down. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave this to dry. So I'm gonna go work on some of the rest of my designs while this is drying. And then I'll come back to you when we do the reveal. This is where the magic happens. So this has all been dried. What we want to do is spritz it lightly again. So you can see that we bring back those colors. We get that translucency happening. And once it's all wet, so let me start getting everything a little bit wet. We let it sit for about 30 to 60 seconds. So in essence, what we're doing is we're kind of reactivating just that little kind of top layer of that paint so that when we go to pull the carrier sheet off, that paint is going to release, right? So this is what allows, I might as well just get the whole thing wet. It's like, while I'm spritzing. Now, I will say this, as much as I measured the middle and I got the exact middle, this is not the middle. So I ended up having to, rather than screw up my whole inlay, I just decided, what the heck? And I left it and I just filled in elsewhere and it's all off center and I'm okay with that. And if somebody isn't, then they just don't have to buy it. But here's the exciting part. This is so exciting with the inlays. Is starting to peel this paper off and seeing all that color that's left behind. So far, we're doing okay. Now, you don't want to throw these sheets out. I'm going to lay them off to the side on the floor and I'm going to let them dry because all this paint that's still on there is still good. I can use it for other projects. Each use, it will get more and more faded, but look at how much paint is still there. So I'm still going to be able to use those designs for some other project. I am now prepping for stripes across all of the upper drawers, and it'll be down along the sides. So I want these a little bit fatter, so I'm using, oh my goodness, very sticky, forget that piece, very sticky painter's tape. And I just line them up. I use the edge of the painter's tape to try and keep me straight. And then I pull one off. So then this next piece, which is my spacer piece, that's gonna be, this will be the colored. So wherever my tape is, it's gonna stay cream. And then these pieces, I line up to the spacer. And perfect. So I'm gonna call that quits. It's not quite there, but you know what? That's kind of working. So I am going to go do the other side and work my way in and then see where I'm at with these. So this is going to be colored, so this needs to be cream. So I'm going to be starting with my full line right there. And then we'll get painting. All right, now that we've got this all taped off, and really that's the most tedious part, we want to make sure that the edges are burnished really well. And then we're going to take our base coat. So we're taking our crinoline paint and we're going to paint in, and I also want to do the tops. So we want to just paint lightly all those edges. And the reason for this is that if there's going to be any bleed through, right, where any paint seeps under the edges, it's going to be the cream. It's going to be the crinoline. And so this helps us get those nice crisp edges. Now I'm going to be distressing this, so that kind of compensates as well. If I happen to get anything that's a little bit off, maybe I didn't burnish it enough or I didn't paint it down enough. But this is my first step, is painting in all these areas with that base coat so that I get as little bleed through as possible. What I do have is a partial can of Annie Sloan's Duck Egg Blue chalk paint. It was a little bit low and it was a little chunky, so I added some water. And then I also added some DIY clay-based paint in Farm Fresh to it. One, because I wanted to have enough for me to be able to possibly paint these borders and things. And I wanted it just slightly darker. So we've got this lovely kind of greeny blue. And now what we do is we paint in those stripes. And I'm just going to paint a single coat because I am going to be doing some distressing on these, but I just want it nice and even, and I am going to do my little tops as well, so it goes in. So I am going to be carrying on, painting my stripes on, and then we'll come back when it's time to peel the tape, which is always fun, the big reveal. How well did those stripes go? Now, I find that for me, the perfect time to remove the tape is when my paint is dry but still a little tacky. It's not fully dried. So that when I pull the tape off, I'm not going to have that paint chipping. And I just remove it nice and slowly, and look at how crisp those lines are. That's the magic of doing that base paint first, doing the edges in that base paint. Now I'm going to be distressing this slightly, so if I did have some bleed through, I could just distress a little harder there. But it's nice to not have to do it in a particular spot. I get the option as to where. If you didn't have any more of your base paint, you could use just a top coat, a clear top coat or sealer, and then that would be whatever is bleeding through underneath first. But stripes, super simple done this way. All right, this is some of the decision time. So with this piece, you can see that I've got these raised division areas, and I didn't make any decisions prior to this about what color each would be because I needed to see kind of how the piece was going. So what I am thinking is this cannot go the blue. By the time that I do the blue, it's going to start being too heavy. So I need to have cream there. I'm going to be doing big diamonds on the top. So I have done some math, not my favorite, so we'll see how I do. And I have just taken my utility knife and cut out a big diamond. Now I'll also save this piece because I can use it for another stencil in the center or stenciling around it or something. And I labeled it top and bottom because it's actually 8 inches tall and 7¼ inches across. So if I've measured correctly, I will have 2 diamonds deep and 1 inch space in between each on all corners and 8 across. And I'll probably do something in that 1 inch space. But again, I'm gonna wait and see. because I don't want it to be too crazy busy. So my decision here is, do I paint this blue and the top all blue and all of the diamonds ultimately are cream, or do I leave that cream, those two cream, and do this? And I need to do at least part of the base in the blue to anchor it. I can't leave that all cream and just all the blue there. So I have the kick plate on the bottom that you can see underneath there that definitely will get painted blue. Now the question is, does this get painted blue in addition to that? When there's no big solid blue line, if the top was going to be cream with blue diamonds. See where I'm going? That's where I definitely left those decisions until it got to this point, because this was all that I knew for sure. So this definitely has to stay cream. I am thinking that this stays cream to kind of blend in with the piece, because I still got hardware to go on there. So that stays cream. I think this has to go blue, and the bottom goes blue, so that they're anchored top and bottom. All right, all the drawers come out again, and that's where I go. I mean, I numbered the drawers, but I think I'll be pretty clear about which goes which, in what order, once I have to put them all back in. So, all right. Before I start working on the top, I wanted to show you this kind of reassembled. So you can see we've got the blue base. I kept this cream so it didn't look too banded here. And I painted the outside edge blue, but I actually ended up leaving the top cream. So I'm gonna paint blue diamonds on top of it, which again is gonna make it a little heavier, but it's not gonna seem as top heavy, I think, as if I had painted it all blue. But I needed to have the blue fronting. So yeah, just, I'm still liking that decision. I mean, part of me still wants to paint that blue just because, but I like it not being blue. I think it kind of disappears, and it makes it not be too heavy, and it gives this a little bit more focus. Additionally, I still have to seal this. The colors are going to be darker, so I'm going to sand, I got to seal, and then I have to do a little bit of aging. So we are going to be doing some dark waxing on this as well, which is going to make it a little bit heavier looking. So I'm trying to keep it a little lighter before that happens. All right, this is the beginning of our stenciling. And we're going to be doing those big diamonds on there. So I'm just looking to put a little bit of paint off to the side. And what I have done is I have labeled top and bottom. I have measured out my 1-inch spacers as well, so that I know how to line it up. Hopefully my math works. So I have my JRV stencil brush, and I am going to, because this is such a big space, easy enough to use that to offload my color, so that when I go out to the edges, I'm not as juicy or heavy with the paint. But because I have so much space in the center, it allows me to be able to deal with that there. Let me just even out the color a little bit. This will all get sanded as well. But that's going to be one diamond. And then we line this up and take it down to my inch. And this is my next. Now my front curves out, so I'm going to have more spacing here and proper spacing out on the edges, just to accommodate that. And all I need to do is try and make sure I get these semi-straight. But one down, 15 more to go. Have the diamonds all finished on the top, all of them. It got a little bit much. Now here's the thing to consider. I cut those out myself, just using a plastic sheet from Michael's. You get 3 to a pack, I think, in the stencil area so that they're just blank. And so I just cut it out myself because I wanted them to be large. I didn't want a stencil where I had lots of small ones, and that's one of the things to consider. Think of the scale of your piece. This is a big piece, but also think about how busy the pattern's going to be. The smaller the diamonds, the busier the pattern. If I'm just doing it across a tabletop, a small table, I can go small. That's going to look great. But too small of diamonds up at the top is going to look really off, both for the size and then also creating too much visual weight on the top. Now, I'm not finished up there. I need to put something in between them, but they're drying. So they're dry to the touch, but they still feel cold, which means I cannot sand them yet. Cold still means the paint is wet, and if I started to sand, they would smear. But all of this was done yesterday, so I'm going to start sanding from here down. So I am just going to take a sanding block. I'm going to wrap it in some 220 grit. Now, I'm looking to kind of soften definitely the lines up on the top, even out. You know, this has got some rough texture, so I want to kind of remove that, even out the texture. This is designed to look worn, right? So it's not a pristine looking design. It's designed to have some age and wear to it. So I'm gonna do some light distressing. Mostly it'll be edges and corners, right? More than anything else. But once that's sanded and then dusted off, I am going to apply a clear coat of DIY wax to it because I want to add some additional aging, so I need the piece to be sealed. So I'm going to be using clear wax, and then when I start doing more here, I'll bring you back. And then definitely once that's dry, when it's dry, I'm going to sand it and wax it, and then add more stuff to the top afterwards. So still lots to go, but to start for now, it's just sanding. Okay, I have got this distressed, lightly distressed, and I have it clear waxed. Now, the next step in the process that I want to do is I actually want to add a bit of dark wax to it. Now, dark wax goes far. So I like to put it onto a plate, and usually I'm using a stencil brush, and I'm just kind of adding it into places. Then I also have kind of my clear brush with some clear wax and just kind of rubbing it in a little bit. So I've got a chance to kind of add it, take it away. I've got my wax rag here as well, but I just want to age this piece a little bit further. So taking those edges and kind of adding the dark wax. Now, dark wax is brown, not black, but I'm just kind of grunging it up a little bit more. And it just is going to add just that extra little bit of that kind of aged look. It's going to soften some of the edges. And I'm going to do that to the whole piece. I decided for the top, after I had sanded and waxed it, I had always thought that I would do something with the diamonds. And I had at first thought I'd do something in between each of them. But I thought that would be too busy. I wanted it still airy and sort of light. So what I elected to do, I didn't want to add something geometric like circles or another little diamond, because that would take away from the softness. All the scroll work of the inlay. So I decided that I needed something kind of softer, something scroll-like. And so I just took this little piece of a stencil from my stash. I have no idea where this is from. It just is what it is. And I stenciled it on with DIY Golden Rule. Now, I did this late yesterday as I was leaving the shop because I want to buff this piece today, and I needed this wax to have hardened enough, to have dried enough that it's not going to smear all over. So I'm going to start buffing the piece out, and this is hard. It's dry enough to be able to do it. But I needed something that wasn't angular, that was softer, smoother lines, kind of mimic some of those curlicues and softer lines in the inlay. And that wasn't a paint that had some translucency to it, so it didn't add a lot of weight to the top of the piece. Now, for buffing, you can take a lint-free rag, you can take a buffing brush, or you can take a handy-dandy little tool like this Milwaukee buffer. It's not cheap, but I do so much of it that this is worth it. I also, for much bigger spaces, have a big Simonized car buffer that I use. But this will make quick work of this, which, if you're doing a lot of big pieces, is well worth the investment. Now, as I go to buff the drawers, I am going to be taking them out. This is also the opportunity for me to do another clean. I didn't clean the inside after sanding. I had cleaned it out at the beginning, but then certainly after sanding, I needed to clean it out again. But I waited because I knew that for all of the drawers except for two, I'm gonna have to drill a hole for the hardware. So I'm gonna start doing that as soon as I get the drawers done. So I wanted to show you what I have done, what I find the easiest. I took these drawers because the two top corners already had the hole in them. Those were the only ones that had a single hole for a knob. Everything else had two holes, or so. All the rest got filled. So what I do is I take a piece of paper, and usually I'll write T for the top, but this one I know because this is the torn edge. So I've taped a couple of pieces of paper together, and I've used this as my guide because it's already got a hole. I want the other hole centered with it. So I've marked off where the existing hole is, and then because these drawers are 2 inches bigger, okay, deeper, I added an additional inch to be able to take it to the center of the others. And all I will do is line the piece of paper up with the top of those drawers and then drill through my black dot the first time and then the hole for all subsequent ones. Additionally, because I want these ones, the knobs, to be even with those ones, what I will do is I will take this and I will use that right in the corner and I will drill. For the other side, I will flip it over to make sure that my math is actually perfect. That way, I don't have to worry if I wasn't quite centered this way, they'll all work. So I will, and I've also taken the screw that goes with the hardware I'm going to be using, and in a sample board, I drilled down into the board and then put the screw in to see if it was the right size. I don't want it too big and I don't want it small, right? So I don't want my screw to be rattling around in the hole. So I just use in a sample board the bit that I think is right, test it out before I drill on the piece. Now, for the hardware, what I decided to do was no bar handles because I've got the pattern here. I don't want to have that big straight line. And I wanted something that was going to be a little bit open and airy. So I had these, which I think kind of have a little bit of an old world feel, you know, kind of that open basket, a little bit of the softer lines. But I thought those were a little too brassy. So what I have done is I have taken one of my favorite golds from the Rust-Oleum metallic line, which is Champagne Mist. And I have just dusted the tops. So you see the difference? You see how it takes that harshness away? And so rather than it looking like this, it's going to be here. So it's just a softer look. It's not going to stand out quite as much, and I think it will be much prettier. So I am going to buff. I'll be taking all my drawers out so that I can buff all of my inside edges as well. So all those drawers had to come out anyway. I will drill my hole, attach my hardware, clean out the inside, and then come back with a finished look at the piece. Here you go, gang. This is our finished piece. I like the soft gold. One, it ties into the soft gold little swirls that I put up on top with our diamonds, but also they sort of fade into the piece. There are times that you want the bold hardware. That's really adding to the look of the piece. With this, because we had so much already going on, we really needed to go softer with the hardware, just so it didn't take away from everything that was happening, or that it made it a little bit too much. I mean, some of you might be thinking it's too much already, and I get you, but also I invite you to think about what the piece looked like. I'll drop in a pic of the piece before and the piece now. I'm not going to be able to get this over to my staging wall. I don't have enough space to maneuver it, and I don't have enough space on the wall. And I can't take it off of these casters because I can't lift this piece on my own. It is so heavy. It's a Peplar, and it is solid. I hope that you learned some different techniques. If you didn't know about some of the tricks for doing stripes, or if you were afraid of doing dark wax on cream, or if you haven't done an inlay, or something. I hope that there were some takeaways along the way. If only I saw it before and I never saw this coming. So seeing the transformation and being part of that process. Let me know what you think. Love to hear your comments as always, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.